Hello, in this video I'm going to be showing you how to clean the carburetor on a 4-stroke 2 horsepower Honda Outboard. The reason you might want to clean the carburetor is if the engine is running roughly or not running at all. What happens is after an extended amount of time, the gasoline in the carburetor can gunk up the jet, which creates fuel and mixes it with the air to create an air-to-fuel mixture. Since this engine is so small, any discrepancies in the air-to-fuel mixture will dramatically set it off or stop it in its tracks. If you need to fix it, you're going to have to get in there and clean it. To complete this job, you actually need very few tools. I have an 8mm socket, a 10mm socket, a flathead screwdriver, a zip tie, various types of tweezers. Instead of carburetor cleaner, I have mass airflow sensor cleaner, but this will also work just as well. And grease. Using the 8mm socket, you want to undo these 2 screws on the top. These 2 screws are identical, so you can keep them together. After removing those 2 screws, this guy will come off. All this guy does is redirect the air so that it makes it harder for water to enter the engine. Air comes in here and exits through here. And the air travels into this guy, which houses a small filter. Since we're already on top of the engine and the throttle cable needs to come undone anyway, we can use our 8mm socket again to undo this bolt on the top. And take the small bracket with it. Down here lower on the engine are 2 longer 8mm bolts which go all the way through the carburetor and into the cylinder head. After removing those 2 bolts, the air filter and the carburetor are now free from the rest of the engine. First, you want to take the air filter out, and it'll just wiggle out. There is a hose to be aware of that inserts into here. All that's left now is to separate the carburetor from the rest of the engine. Is to disconnect the throttle cable, the choke linkage, and the fuel line, which runs straight into the back over there and is held on by a small little clamp. First, I'm going to undo the throttle linkage, since it's the thinnest one. Just like that, it came undone, and you can maneuver it out of the way. Now I'm going to try to tackle the fuel line. Since the carburetor is mostly free, you can move it around a little bit to help yourself. Okay, clamp is off, so now all I gotta do is push the hose off its fitting. Alright, I have the fuel line zip tied at the top of the engine above the fuel tank, so no more gasoline is going to be coming out. Now, all I have to do is disconnect the choke, just like that. And now, our carburetor is nice and free. Now that the carburetor is out and it's not hemorrhaging fuel everywhere, we have to attack this bolt on the bottom, which is 10mm this time. It's also worth mentioning that you should remember the relation in which the carburetor fuel drain is in correlation to the overflow, because on the bottom of the engine there's an access hole so that you can drain the fuel if you need to without removing the carburetor. And if you drained it well, a little bit of fuel might come out, but we're looking pretty good. Okay, just like this. This bowl drops out, and you can take a look in here. This is actually pretty clean. Sometimes you might see more rust or things in here that could cause a problem, but we're actually looking pretty good. Also, in the bottom of here is where the jet is. We need a flathead screwdriver in order to unscrew it, take it out, and we're going to give it a good washing. You want to be very careful when you do this, because if you strip this, it could mean not getting the jet out at all. Just like that, there it is. Now we have the jet out of the carburetor. You can take a good look at the pinhole sized opening in it, which allows the gasoline to mix with the air. If this gets hampered in any way, the air to fuel mixture gets knocked off balance and it'll be running too lean and not run at all. So filling a water bottle cap with our mass airflow sensor cleaner and submerging the jet in it, we're going to let that soak, and you can already possibly see some little black specks. Alright, now that the jet's all clean, it's going to go back into the carburetor. So I'm going to drop it in and use the flathead screwdriver again just to screw that back on in. Now you don't want to go too tight, so you can take it out again if this problem reoccurs. Up next, I'm going to take a little bit of grease and just go around this O-ring. This will help the longevity of the O-ring, make sure that it doesn't leak. Now I'm going to put this bowl back on, and remember, put it on the way you took it off. And so the drain and this overflow are going to line up. Drop the 10 millimeters bolt inside and just tighten that up. Before putting the carburetor back on, I recommend reattaching the fuel line. I'm going to slide the clamp all the way back up to the top, just where it was. Up next, I'm going to attach the throttle linkage. Got to make sure it goes under this small hook under here, similarly to the choke cable. Above this guy up here, and it's got to go into this hole right up here. I'm going to put the air filter back on now. And you got to remember that there is a hose sticking out through here. Now we're going to screw in the two longer bolts, 8 millimeter, into the engine. While we still have access to it, don't forget to put the bracket back onto the throttle cable. We're just going to put the first stage of our air filter on. It's going to fit on just like that. Again, identical bolts, so it does not matter which hole you put them in. Get them started by hand. I'm going to screw them down. So that's how you clean the carburetor on a 4-stroke 2 horsepower Honda Outboard. It's a great way for beginners to learn about carburetors or engines in general. And it really isn't all that challenging. You just have to have the right tools and be careful while working. It's the day after. I got the motor in a water bucket. We're going to test it and fire it up.